Welcome. My name is Vince Baack. As Adam mentioned, I serve on the board of directors of the Minnesota Pork Producers Association with Adam, so we go back a little while here. But as Adam said, I'm the director of finance at New Fashion Pork. I've been with Brad and Meg Frecking for 13 years. Prior to my time there, I worked for Hubbard Feeds, and prior to my time there, I was a banker. So a little bit about me. First off, I am kind of a smart ass, so please forgive me. So I'm going to have a few slides in here. But I grew up on a small farm in north central Iowa, cash grain and hogs. I spent my formative years at Iowa State University. We didn't play very well this weekend, but unfortunately that's the way it is. Nice to see some folks here. Hey Chad. Then spent some time at U.S. Bank and ultimately spent some time at Hubbard Feeds before joining Brad and Meg Frecking. So, married, got 3 kids, failed as a dad. None of my children went to Iowa State. I have 2 Badgers and a Hawkeye, so I had to be careful here. I didn't show the Badger pictures. But I guess with that being said, I thought we'd start us off. I just wanted to show a couple of my favorite T-shirts that some people wear at the office. Keep calling me bacon. That's too much bacon, said no one ever. So, yeah, guys, you're laughing too hard. Come on, keep it down. So, anyway, again, welcome. Thank you for putting up with me for this period of time. I want to give you a little background on New Fashion Pork, talk about a little bit about our sustainability efforts. What is sustainability? I'll spend a little bit of time on, and then some other thoughts. But I do want to say last year, our owner, Brad Frecking, was the Morrison lecturer here at the Leman Conference, and I stole shamelessly from his presentation on some of my material, so I want to acknowledge Brad and his work there. A little bit about New Fashion Pork. We're a family operation, headquartered in Jackson. Brad and Meg founded the company in 1994 after Brad graduated from the University of Minnesota. Both Brad and Meg are from small farms in Jackson County, and their kids are very involved in livestock and very involved in showing. Who we are, we're the 19th largest pork producer in the U.S. We're an integrated pork production enterprise, which I'll talk about a little bit. We employ nearly 400 people, produce 1.4 million head of hogs a year from 57,000 sows. We've got operations from basically Wyoming to Indiana. For sow farms, the bulk of our finishing here is in the upper Midwest and southwest Minnesota and northwest Iowa. We own and control all our sow farms and about 80% of our finishing spaces. Got a couple of hundred head of finishing sites, 2 AI centers, and then we are a stakeholder and owner in both Triumph Foods and in Seaboard Triumph, the new processing plant in Sioux City. Operations consist of our foundation enterprise, the mothership I call it, New Fashion Pork. We have a company called BWT Holdings that's owned by Brad and Meg. They own about 16,000 acres of farmland in southwest Minnesota, northwest Iowa, a few acres out in Indiana, a few in South Dakota. We've got a couple of subsidiaries, NFP Construction, which is our construction company, which they built the bulk of our sites. Sioux Valley Transport, which is our live haul sub. Again, we talked about Triumph and Triumph Foods and Seaboard Triumph. Old Fashioned Pork, which we started here about 4 years ago in partnership with Hanor. It's our traditional, air quotes, pork production enterprise. It's a 1,400 sow farrow to finish operation in Clark County, Wisconsin, near Thorpe. It's no antibiotics ever, open pen gestation, 75% solid flooring in the finishers, things of that sort. And then lastly, we have an operation in Belize. Here's just a quick, again, the boxes aren't so important as much as just how we've kind of grown the business. And this Dr. Chad Hasted, who's our nutritionist, is here. As Chad and I have often talked, there's a reason that we work for Brad and Brad doesn't work for us. Here's a picture of our plant in St. Joe, our plant in Sioux City, our Daly's Bacon plant, brand new plant in St. Joe, our Esterville feed mill, which Chad and I were pretty involved with over the years. That's in northwestern Iowa, not far from the lakes. Here's a aerial picture of our Wyoming sow farm. It's in Albin, Wyoming, and extreme southeastern Wyoming, very close to Nebraska, Scottsbluff. Here's a picture of our old-fashioned pork operation. Again, this is in near south of Thorpe, Wisconsin, basically east of here, about 2 hours. And here's just a satellite picture of our area in Belize. And we have a pretty sizable farming operation right in there. It's a picture of a sugar cane processing plant we're involved in Belize. And a picture of our grain handling and edible grain facility in Belize near Belmopan, the capital. Sustainability. Now, I remember a wise man once said, the only thing that's more dangerous than a vet that thinks he's a nutritionist is a banker that thinks he's an attorney. But I also want to carry that over to sustainability. I don't work a lot with sustainability, but I know really smart people that do, and so here I am. So from our vantage, sustainability has four intertwined components: economic, environment, community, and the public. Of course, it goes without saying that for us to be sustainable, we have to be profitable and viable for the long term. Because if we aren't that, we're not around, we're not here for our employees, we're not here for our communities. Obviously, we're just not in existence. Several components make up the long-term viability, sustainability. Obviously, ownership, leadership, management, employees are very important from a people standpoint. Production, obviously pig output, genetics, feed, production efficiencies, herd health, and then capital is obviously facilities, financing, equity. There's certainly an external component to our viability. Commodity markets, weather, trade policy, regulations, politics, foreign animal disease. I'd say we're in a very interesting time right here. And if anybody has any comments on that, I'd welcome them. Our own economic impact, again, getting back to our economic sustainability. Our forward employees have roughly, we have roughly an $18 million a year annual payroll. We purchase roughly $100 million a year in feed ingredients. And I know these figures are right because Chad gave them to me the other day. So they must be good. And then we also have, we purchased $30 million of other services and supplies. Local truckers, animal health and supply firms, obviously fuel, building supplies, hardware stores, professional services. I think that if my math serves me right, when we start talking about some of these volumes, on any given day, we've probably got between 120 and 140 semis on the road, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. So I think it's close to 30,000 semi-loads annually between feed, pig movements, things of that sort. That's something that struck me. I mean, you really don't think about that kind of component. And Dr. Cordes, they burn diesel, so sorry about that. Okay. The second component of sustainability for us is the environment. Obviously, this is the classic view of swine industry sustainability, improving water and air, use of nutrients, the manure as fertilizer, soil conservation and erosion control as we apply that manure, and then we do engage in agronomic practices which increase our yields, improve soil health, reduce fuel consumption, decrease pesticide use, and reduce the carbon footprint. Now, I didn't have good math there, but I should have done some more research on the web, right, Dr. Cordes? From a water and air quality standpoint, we've reduced our water use by converting from nipple waters to cup waters in our grow finish barns. Now, can I say how much water that's been on a per head or per unit or per animal unit basis? I cannot. I do know that on average it's probably reduced our manure volume from anywhere from 15 to 20% on any given site. Dr. Chad, would you agree with that? Yes, no? Thanks. We use natural bioproducts in our nutrient storage structures to reduce odors and enhance nutrient availability. Obviously, we strictly adhere to all state and county requirements when we site barns. Again, if we're going to be sustainable, we have to be good neighbors, and for us to be good neighbors, we have to play by the rules. And then lastly, for certain of our sites, we have installed, I call it a biofence. I don't think that's a technical term, but we capture dust particulate to further reduce odor. We are currently participating in a study with the University of Minnesota to evaluate the effectiveness of using such fences. Here's an example of one. This would be at the Sanderson site in not far from Esterville, or about a little over about 3 hours straight southwest of here. And that's a close-up picture of the fence. But the study we're doing is we have control where there's no fence, and then we have 2 other fences that we're measuring the particulate matter accumulation. From a obviously a nutrient standpoint, a manure management standpoint, the land component of our business is very important to us. In 2010, BWT Holdings was established to reverse integrate NFP into land ownership and cash corn production. BWT is a very sophisticated name process. It's named for Ben, Will, and Thomas, Brad, and Meg's boys. Today we own, Today we own about 16,000 acres of land, as I mentioned before, and we primarily grow corn. Now that rotation will change a little bit in any given year, but I would say for the most part it's probably 80% corn. I know next year we intend to grow very, very little soybeans. One of our primary goals at BWT is to utilize the organic natural nutrients from the hog manure from our pigs as fertilizer. We use this to replace our commercial fertilizer in our corn production system. Majority of our crop acres receive nutrients from NFP barns. And again, this organic fertilizer's got several advantages, but the big one is it increases yields, improves the microbial activity of the soil, improves soil water holding capacity by via the increase in organic matter, and improves overall soil health. And it says in 1919, forgive me, it was last year, 2018. Last year we applied nearly 200 million gallons of organic nutrients to over 35,000 acres of farmland across our operations. From a grow finish standpoint, that number was about 85 million gallons applied to about 20,000 acres. The value of those nutrients on a commercial fertilizer equivalent is roughly $5 million, or an average value per acre of $140. Certainly we believe, and I think many of our peers and counterparts in our industry would believe, that properly applied, these nutrients should be able to comfortably produce 200 bushel an acre corn on good quality farmland here in the Midwest, assuming normal weather. I can't remember the last time we saw normal weather, but that's what we're looking for. And in most cases, that can be done with little or no supplemental commercial or other fertilizers. From an application standpoint, we have both internal and external applicators. For our sow farms, we utilize several commercial applicators. The reason for that is that the commercial applicators are set up to do drag hose operations, which can apply a high volume of manure in a little bit shorter period of time. As many of you know, or maybe some of you don't, usually the manure at a sow farm, most sow farms have either open basins or lagoons. And so that manure is more dilute. So the application rate on the sow farm manure is at a higher rate than the application rate would be from a grow finish building or a wean to finish building. Now, some of the sow farms we've built here in the last several years, we have put deep pits under those farms to increase that nutrient content and reduce our volume. Generally, applying sow farm manure is a money-losing proposition. It costs more to haul and apply the manure than the value you get from it. So when we work with our farmer partners who have the land next to our sow farms, we basically work on some sort of compensation in terms of to cover the manure application costs. It's not necessarily tied to paying us for the value of the nutrients. From an internal standpoint, we have 3 standalone crews for our grow finish operation, consisting of 11 tractors and bulk rigs applying manure each fall and spring. And again, that operation last fall did 85 million gallons. Our investment in this venture was $6 million in capital equipment plus personnel, fuel, and R&M costs. Here's a picture. This is an 8370R John Deere mechanical front tractor with a 9,000 gallon GEA tank. And again, that manure is applied, injected into the soil. Here's another picture of the field. So weather permitting, we like to apply all of our nutrients in the fall. The biggest reason for that is it reduces compaction, or there's less likelihood of compaction on wet soils as compared to spring applied. Plus, those farmers that we actually work with to take our manure that aren't a part of our farming operation hate spring applications of manure, because in spring everybody wants to get in the field, get their tillage done, get the seed bed prepared, get their corn planted, get the beans planted, and away you go. So from our standpoint, we utilize state-of-the-art application technology to apply our nutrients. We grid map each of our farms. And again, I don't know how many of you have got an agronomy background, but what a grid map is that in very small components, 2 acres or 3 acre components, several soil samples are drawn. Those samples are mixed, aggregated, and then they're sent to the lab. And then a fertility profile is generated. So we can take those grid samples and overlay them with our manure application information so that we can actually do some variable rate application of manure, meaning that for those areas where the fertility is high, we don't have to put as much manure on. For those areas where the fertility is low, we can up that rate. One of the things that we do is that we have some of the best state-of-the-art GPS systems in agriculture in our equipment. And I'm just going to go back here. See, there's a globe on top of the tractors. So what happens is we utilize a technology called RTK, which is a sub-inch technology. Basically, we can get down to a 1/4 inch accuracy. So in the fall, what we do is we apply the manure. We have a map of that. In the spring, we'll come back with our spring tillage, which I'll show you here in a minute. And we could basically till right over where we applied the fall manure. And then we we install those maps again in the tractors that do our planting, and we can plant right down the same track where we did the fall manure application and the spring tillage. It's really quite amazing. So, but in each of our tractors, we've got precision application controllers. So we can be very, very precise. I mean, literally within probably 4 or 5 gallons an acre. Hey, Carrie, thank you for coming. It's always nice to see your fellow employees come out and fly the flag. And then we also talked about the variable rate application information. Strip tillage. This is something that's pretty new to us. Again, I don't know how many of you have much of an agronomy or farming background, but basically here in the upper Midwest, there are 2 types. There's 3 types of tillage. There's no-till, where you basically just plant your crop into last year's crop ground. It's great for managing water runoff. It's great for managing wind erosion and water erosion on the soil. But because you don't do any tillage at all, you do end up applying more chemistry on a per acre basis as compared to a more conventional tillage system. Conventional tillage is the classic. Most farmers today don't moldboard plow anymore. There's probably a few of us still out there. But most of conventional tillage today consists of using a tool in the fall called a disc ripper that buries the fodder from the corn crop, but leaves about a 50% cover on top of the soil, so that again it can hold. It minimizes wind erosion, minimizes water erosion, but again helps bury some of that fodder, because one of the things that the corn plant does when you plant corn in the spring into a heavy fodder cover like last year's corn stalks, it just doesn't come up as well. The soil's colder, it's wetter, the growth is a little bit more variable. If you can have a nice warm seed bed that's dark soils, when that corn is planted, or where that corn is planted in spring, it'll come up better, and chances are your yield will be better as well. The last method is something that we've implemented very aggressively. Over the past 3 years, we've increased the use of our strip till in our corn production operation and agronomic practices. Strip till consists of a spring tillage operation whereby you till about a 6-inch strip, and you work up the soil about 6 inches deep. And again, that strip is right over where we applied the manure the previous fall. And so what that does, that gives you a nice area in which you can plant your corn or beans, but you can plant right into that strip, and you're not dealing with that fodder like you would with a conventional tillage or no tillage system. As compared to conventional conservation tillage, strip till offers a double benefit of reducing costs and improving yields. The biggest cost reduction component is the fact that you're saving yourself a fall tillage operation. And that can be anywhere. A disc ripper on a typical tractor, you might be running anywhere from $10 to $20 an acre in the fall when you're doing that tillage operation. So strip tillage, From our standpoint, we've shown that we've achieved anywhere from a 6 to 8 bushel per acre yield advantage through the use of strip tillage versus conventional tillage. Again, it improves soil health. Big reason for that is that it increases the microbial level in the soils, and it sounds kind of interesting, but it's absolutely true. If you go out in a strip till field that's been strip till for several years, the amount of earthworms in that soil, in the upper foot or 2 foot of that soil, is unbelievable. And part of that earthworm activity, number one, earthworms help break down the organic matter from last year's crops, the fodder. And the other thing they do is that the tunnels that they dig help improve the soil and water holding, improve the soil water holding capacity of that operation. Again, you've got decreased fuel use, you decrease pesticide use, and also reduce the carbon footprint. Now, I threw that in there because it sounded good, but doctor, you can help us calculate that sometime. Okay, so here's how our strip tillage system works. The organic nutrients which have accumulated in our pits during the year are all applied and injected directly into the soil using narrow bands, using the GPS technology I discussed. In the spring, our growers, and I was remiss, we don't own all of our farm equipment. We own very little. What we do is we contract with local farmers to do our tillage and agronomy practices for us. Because from our standpoint, we probably have a dozen growers that help us run our acres. In the spring, when the weather's fit, that means we've got 12 24-row planters going at once. We've got 12 combines harvesting corn in the fall. We just wouldn't be able to spend the kind of money on the investment and have it be a reasonable return if we tried to own that equipment and operate it ourselves. So in the spring, our growers use these same GPS maps to strip till over the exact areas where the manure was applied and which manure was applied in the fall. Then after the strips are repaired, the farmers then plant the corn directly in those same strips. So this is not our machine. It's a representative machine. Here's probably a 400 horse tractor, and again, that may not mean a lot to some of you out here. But for us John Deere junkies, that's pretty nice, this tractor. This is the strip till bar, and you can see here each one of these are a row. And underneath that row, you can see that there's a variety of discs and a piece of equipment that work the soil, get it nice and mellow, eliminates clods, and prepares a good seed bed. This would be again, this isn't exactly what ours looks like, but this would be representative of what a normal row unit looks like. You can see here, this removes the fodder in front of the row unit. This tills that row unit and works it up, and then this little rolling basket here at the end smooths it out, and then that's followed by a little harrow, a little rake, if you will, to make that a nice level seed bed. This is what strip till looks like. You can see how the fodder is accumulated in the middle. The strips where the corn is planted is nice and clean, and you can tell that the emergence of that corn is very nice and even. So it's basically get all the advantages of no-till with fewer disadvantages, and it's certainly get all the advantages of conventional conservation tillage, again, by having black soils in which you're planting your corn crop to grow that corn. Okay? If we could watch a little video here, let's do the video I had in my thumb drive.
Sustainability is about the most efficient use of resources: feed, water, fuels, human capital. We've always been strongly involved in R&D research. We conduct about 25 to 30 research trials a year, and a lot of that research is about the more efficient use of nutrients.
Our manure is extremely valuable to our farming operation. It's a natural fertilizer, and we certainly would rather use that than commercial fertilizer. It increases our yield. Environmentally, it adheres to the soil. Those nutrients remain in the soil and is less likely to migrate off the soil during rain events and so forth. So it's a great product and essential to our operation.
Sustainability is important to me because I own farm ground. The more organic matter you have in the soil, the more water holding capacity you have also. And it's just a healthier soil. So that's one of the reasons we're going to strip tillage. So our version of strip tillage is a little different than most people's. We're utilizing our hog manure on all of our acre. So what we're doing is manure tanks are putting the manure in 30-inch strips. We're putting it 6 to 8 inches deep. Our strips are 3-4 inches wide. We're leaving the corn stalks untouched until next spring. In the springtime then we come back with our Dawn pluribus units, warm up our strips, and then we plant directly onto it. So with our manure equipment, we're using GPS technology. So we're running RTK for our guidance lines. We use variable rate manure applications, rate controllers on everything. We're mapping everything, and then we come back in the spring, run right down them same strips, and then using the same lines to plant into. So we're basically putting our nutrients right where our plants need them.
Environmental sustainability and animal care really go hand in hand. One of the unique things about farming today is that there's so many new technologies out there to improve the process and make your production better, both on the land and the animal side of things. And so it's really farmers trying to do their best every single day, not only for them and their families, for their children that are coming on board into their farming operations, but also for their communities.
Okay, here we go. So our third component of sustainability, and I'm going to probably walk through this here just a little bit, is our communities. By far the bulk of our employees live and work in rural America. We have approximately 400 full-time staff, many of which either live in the country or in towns of less than 5,000 people. In fiscal 19, which our fiscal year runs from August to August every year, our farm-level payroll was $16 million. Much of this money is spent at local grocery stores, banks, car dealers, gas stations, local businesses. Our staff and their families support in 10 local schools and churches. Our active volunteers in our schools and community organizations are very strong supporters of 4-H and FFA and make their communities a more vibrant place to live and work. Another thing that we do, this is a program that we set up for Jackson County. Brad and Meg were instrumental in putting this together. We established a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. It's called Jackson Food for Kids. It's a backpack meal program where we provide 40,000 meals a year for over 160 local children. Basically, for those of you familiar with the backpack program, every weekend the kids will be given a backpack full of food. And they're given to children who come from food insecure and nutritionally at-risk families. And we've been doing this now for a couple years. That's very heavily supported by NFP staff. And we also have a broad base of community support with over 30 local businesses and dozens more individuals. It's really a tremendous program. The last area of sustainability that I'd like to talk about is the public. Obviously with the public trust. And again, most of you would be familiar with some of the National Pork Board kind of programs. Obviously we very heavily support our animal welfare initiatives. We're strong users of the TQA, PQA programs. We participate in the National Pork Board We Care and Ethical Principles program. From public health, we have food safety initiatives, responsible use of antibiotics and foodborne illness, in hopes of reducing foodborne illness. And then consumer trends, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So what we do from an animal care is that, number one, it's a big deal. It's a big deal for Brad, it's a big deal for Meg, and when it's a big deal for them, it becomes a big deal for everybody else. I was at a seminar once, and some of you may have heard this, but the speaker said, long ago I figured out whatever interests my boss fascinates me. So guess what? We're all interested in animal welfare initiatives. So we have a full-time person for an animal well-being, Emily Erickson. Again, we've got a formal written animal welfare policy. We have a zero tolerance, one strike you're gone policy with both our employees and with our growers. And we've got that written into our grower contracts. I think I'm just going to move through here, but I do want to note, and since 2015, NFP has reduced our use of medically important antibiotics by over 80% in our swine production systems. We feel pretty proud of that. and sorry, I was going to hit that last one. Since 2015, we've transitioned routine feed-grade antibiotics out of our system. Okay. This is going to spend a little bit about old-fashioned pork. That's our system there. It talks about the GAP program. We sell a lot of our product to Whole Foods because it does comply with GAP. Okay. Here's some pictures of our system there. Okay. And then I think you guys are all aware of the whole Impossible Burger and things of that sort. Won't talk about that much. One thing I do want to finish my presentation with, and Brad wanted me to bring this up too, is the fallacy of open sow housing. I know it's a big topic now, out in the industry, out in the market, but we have farms that have it and we have farms that don't. Our farms that have I just call open sow housing, OSH, have run a 3% higher mortality as compared to our farms that don't. That by the time you figure in our reduced wean pig output, sow loss, sow replacement cost, higher facility costs, and feed expense, we figure it runs us about $4 a pig more to have open sow housing as compared to individual sow housing farms. Okay, more to the point, and I know our own staff can back this up. We have 2 farms that we've built in Indiana, 2 6,000 sow farms that we built since 2015. They're literally 25 miles apart. The designs and layouts are identical to each other, except one farm has open sow housing, the other farm has individualized sow housing. Both, they share common management. They're fed out of the same feed mill, and the open sow housing farm is 3.3 higher percent sow mortality. So, again, open sow housing from our standpoint is neither sustainable or humane. Here's just a nice little graphic to make everybody feel good. So, I'll close with NFP strongly believes that our integrated approach positions us to provide one of the most stable, reliable, and sustainable food production models in the world. Sustainability is something we do every day.